Alrighty, so we are going to be going over some inequalities here. It says write an inequality and graph the solution. So here are some steps when you're looking at the question to kind of figure out what you have to do. So first of all, we're going to be given a number and let's call that our starting point. So first we have to identify what's going to be the starting point. Next, based on the question, we have to decide whether the number is going to be included or excluded from the inequality. So if it's included, we're going to be using these two symbols in the green here, less than or equal to, or greater than or equal to, and we're going to be determining the less than or greater than based on the question. Now, if we decide that we're not going to include the number, the starting point within the interval, we will just be using these signs here in the blue, which is just less than or greater than. And then we are going to be using a number line to graph the inequality. If we look at the inclusive version, we can see right here we're going to be filling in a circle on our starting point, which indicates that it's okay to use that value. And if we're going to exclude, we are going to have an open circle like this, which means that we can't use the value. And then we just fill in the direction based on whether it's a less than or equal to. And we'll also just make sure that we label the graph so that the viewer knows what the graph represents. So let's just jump into the questions here. And number one, it says you must get a minimum of 85%. So the first thing we can do is identify the starting point, which is 85%. That's what's given in the problem. Now we have to decide, are we going to include the 85% or are we going to exclude? And the key here is this word right here, minimum. So whenever you have the word minimum or maximum, that's going to give you a clue as to whether or not you're going to be using less than or equal to. So when you're given the word minimum, you're going to be using the greater than, and if you can include it, you can also use the greater than or equal to, because a minimum means that that is the smallest value that you can have, and you can have more. Now, the maximum is the opposite. When you see the word maximum, you're going to be using the less than or equal to, or just the less than, because the maximum means that is the highest number that you can have. So now we have determined because it's a minimum, we're going to be doing greater than. And are we going to include it or exclude it? You must get a minimum of 85%. So that based on the sentence itself, it's saying that we can have 85% or more. So we're going to go ahead and include it. And typically, the question will also specify specifically if you can't use that value or not. So let's just go ahead and graph this. We can draw our point right in the middle. We'll have this be 85%. And because we are including, we're going to fill in the dot. And we decided that because it's minimum, we are going to do a greater than. So we will be going in this direction here. And you can just draw a little arrow to just represent that it goes all the way down the number line. And then if you wanted to label this, you could write percent, or I don't know if it represents tests or anything of that nature, but just make sure to label your graph. So let's go to the second one here. You have a maximum of $30 to spend. Again, first, let's identify our starting point, which is going to be $30. And um, we have this word maximum here. So what does that mean? That means, as we previously discussed, we're going to be using this less than sign or less than or equal to, depending on if we're going to include or exclude. So let's figure that out now. It says you have a maximum of 30 to spend. So that means you can spend the 30 or less. So if you can, spend the 30, that means you can include it. So we're going to go ahead and include that. And so we'll go ahead and now do the graph. We'll put 30 here. And because we're including, we're going to be filling in the dot. And we decided that it's a less than, so we will actually be going this direction now. And you can draw a little arrow to indicate that it goes all the way down the number line. So let's go to the next one. You have greater than 5 pairs of shoes. So what is our starting point? Our starting point is going to be 5 pairs of shoes. And I'm so sorry, I forgot to label the graph up here. So we can just label this amount of money, whatever is appropriate. Um, so in this problem, it specifically says greater than, which is this symbol here. If it said greater than or equal to, then we would use the greater than or equal to sign. But since it's pretty straightforward and um, it's given by the sign here, we're not using the equal to part. So we're going to actually exclude the point, meaning we can't use the number 5. We can't have 5 pairs of shoes. We'll still use that as our starting point here, but when we draw the graph, we're going to be using that open circle, meaning that we can't have 5. And because it's greater than, we're going to be going to the right here. And then we'll label the graph. We can label this pairs of shoes. Okay, and then the last one here, you have at least 45 guests coming. So what's our starting point? It's going to be 45. Now let's talk about this, at least. Um, when you see these words, at least, that is going to indicate that we are going to be using the less than or equal to sign, inclusive. So when it says at least 45, we can have 45. We can also have 45 or more. I'm sorry, greater than or equal to. And the other words that you're going to want to look out for are at most. So that will indicate that we use less than or equal to. If it said at most 45 guests, we could have 45 or less than that. So the question, are we going to include or exclude? We will include based on that. So now we draw the graph, start at the starting point, and because it's inclusive, we will fill in the circle. And we said at least, so it's going to be greater than and or equal to, and so we will go in this direction here. All right, and that's pretty much how you do it. If you have any other questions, you can feel free to message me. I can also send you a PDF of these notes if you need it.